would help if I add myself to the stage.
AOT is ahead of time.
Ahead of time. Thank you. I knew it was something around that. I just could not think of the name of that. All right. Hopefully we have audio. Yeah, there we go. It does help if I add myself to the stream. So this is nice because a lot of times when you were using the params array, you would have like a list and then you would say to array, right? So I mean, you were just having to do extra work. They took that out, right? So now if you have any type of iNumeral, right? So that's nice. This lock object, no one's going to use. That's the other thing you have to remember. A lot of things get added to a language are from Microsoft, right? You know, it's because Microsoft has to do things. So this new escape sequence, this is interesting. You know, one of the characters that is hard to capture is the escape key, or more importantly, the escape character. So now they added a -E, so you can actually escape it. So because if you read this here, you know, before you actually had to know the hex code of it. Now you don't have to know the hex code. So again, whether any of us in this room will ever use that, probably not, but it's there. Huh? You will, because it's there. Let's see here. And again, a bunch of the stuff really is this is okay. So this implicit index access. This is interesting, but I think it's hard to read. This is really getting added in for more folks who've done like F# and some other languages that are now doing like C#. But you've got like that. You should never use anything called unsafe. There's a reason why it's called unsafe. But again, Microsoft needs those kind of things. Okay. So this is interesting, but I haven't really figured out the use of this really. So partial members. So I think since like .NET 4, .NET 3, .NET 4, it's a long time ago. We added in partial classes. And the whole idea of a partial class, so if you look right here, I have this partial class C and another partial class C. You usually don't have them right next to each other, usually in different files. And that's one of the reasons why you use it. It's like, oh, I want to move, although this is an anti-pattern, but hey, I've got a really big class that has a lot of stuff in it, so I'm going to break it apart and put it in two different files. Although sure enough, if you have a class so big that you need to break it up in two different files, yeah, maybe you have a problem, right? Maybe that class is too big. But another prime example is any framework. Any framework uses partial classes a lot. So if you think about your data elements in a framework, those are supposed to be partial classes. And it's because any framework injects stuff in there. So that's a perfect example of using a partial class. So like I said, that's been around for a long time. It's just a way to have two things represent one class. The thing they added in here is this partial method, right? Or partial member, I'm sorry. And so here you can see, like, I'm declaring a declaration, partial, public partial string name, so a property, a getter and a setter. But then in this other method, I'm actually then implementing that getter and setter. Yeah. The only thing I can see this, again, let's think of like an any framework situation, right? A tools situation where, I want the user to be able to find what their class looks like, but then I'm going to inject in another partial class that I'm injecting into, stuff I want to do.
How does it know which one to use?
Well, so there's a reason why this is only on members, right? So your properties, and basically what the compiler is doing is it's basically saying, again, paraphrasing what the compiler is doing, it's basically saying, okay, you've got this property called name, but then and you called it a partial. So you said you might. I'm actually curious. I bet you it doesn't compile until I don't know. I'm kind of curious if it compiles. I don't have .NET 9 on my machine yet. Maybe I do. I might. Hold on a second. I'm curious here.
When you override something, then it knows to use the override, but now you got
Yeah. So let's see here. I may or may not have .NET 9 on this machine. I do. So here's what I'm curious. The if you don't implement the partial, does it work? Right. So
you only have it on, on one of the classes.
right. And you would think it would have to because of the main use case for this, right? So
You just drop it on that.
So let's add a class. We'll call this, I don't care what I call the file name. All right. But then, so we paste that in. Yeah, look, I have a red squiggly. So it must have an implementation. So I then get into, I don't.
You must have an implementation. So you have to, it's kind of like an abstract.
Well, sure enough, for the folks, that was my whole question, whether or not this works or not. I was kind of curious. So I'm kind of, again, I get into why would you use this, right? I mean, not the why you use it, but one of the reasons why I would think you use it, again, as a tools vendor and to say, hey, you give me your structure, your class, but then I'm going to inject some things in there, right? But, I mean, obviously, and when I say inject it, it's so that, the things that build classes for you, right? Where you don't want it to override your code, right? Or overwrite, not override. So I don't know. That's so I'm sure enough, Thindle, on Twitch has used this, but I don't know. I have to. I'm sure I can find somewhere where Microsoft explains that more. Well, probably if we actually look at the article on partial methods members. Hey, good.
Okay.
Yeah. They had the desk set up this way, and I was like, I knew we weren't going to have as many people tonight, so I was like, I'll just leave it in case someone's actually expected to still be this way. See, here it says the developer doesn't supply an optional implementing decoration. The compiler can remove the decoration, declaring decoration at compile time. It's an interesting use case. But yeah, so you've got that. They've added in the field keyword, which again is another interesting thing. We've had fields in C# since day one. We just didn't have a field keyword. We just it was just public string name equals Chad, right? And that was a field, right? They've now added a keyword. Again, they're really doing this more for compatibility with other languages than anything else. So
All your variable name field.
So it's interesting you bring that up. One of the hardest parts that the C# team has is making changes because so many people have code like that, right? And so they have, this is one of those things that it will break code. Actually, and they're kind of talking about that here. That's right. It's still a preview, right? It's not even in, so you actually have to. So this is one of those, they're working on it, but they're not done with it. So hey, use it at your own risk because, it might change. But you notice that, name the field variable or use the ampersand token, right? So it's not ampersand, the @ symbol. So that's .NET 9. We should see some more interesting things coming in .NET 10 because, like I said, there were some big things they took out. But honestly, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of changes to the C#, not .NET, but to C# that are really impact everyday developers. And part of that is the language is really good already. There's only so many changes they can make. And trust me, in the MVP community, there's a lot of people wish they would stop release recently every year. That is a big big conversation to include. So last week, like I said, I was at a conference, and one of the people at the speaking was Jared Persons, who is he's one of the lead designers of C#. And I heard him have several conversations where, yeah, you all need to quit adding stuff. We don't need this every year. So, which he gave a diplomatic answer every time. And again, a lot of what they're doing is for Microsoft, right? They need stuff because they're doing a lot of cool stuff. All right. Any framework. Another thing that there are some good changes, but nothing earth-shattering unless you're using the provider for Cosmos. So that's one of the interesting big changes in here. So, I mean, number one with any framework, again, performance improvements, right? So there are performance improvements because basically they're now in a constant battle with Dapper.net to, who's the fastest ORM. Dapper.net is always going to win because by its nature, it's going to be faster. But every year, basically every year Eve Core catches up, and then Dapper makes changes, but they're much more lightweight. But so you always have that. But some of the big things here, like I say, one of the things that they did this like 2022, I think it was. Yeah, 2022, 2023, they actually added support for Cosmos within any framework. Kind of interesting. So actually Jasper does use it, but they used it before I got there. And we have since talked about we don't use it because it does some things that isn't really right for a NoSQL database. But if you are using it, they made some really big improvements that actually makes it worth looking at again. Number one, querying with partition keys and document IDs. So Cosmos, if you don't know Cosmos, it's a NoSQL database, super, super fast. And the fastest way to get queries is to give a partition key and the document ID. You can't get any faster, and you also can't get any cheaper. Because hey Chris, you pay for the way how you pay for Cosmos. Well, there's two different ways, but the primary way people pay for Cosmos is the size of their request, right? And so you're paying what's called a request unit. Well, this kind of query, partition key and document ID, is the cheapest type of query you can do, right? So it's really nice to see they made some big improvements here because, like I say, it's the best way to query stuff. So another big thing they added here, and this is so I don't use hierarchical partition keys because I haven't had a need to yet. I have a project coming up where we might actually use this. So, okay, your partition keys. Partition keys are extremely important in Cosmos. And the primary reason is because the way how Cosmos divides its data up, right? So Cosmos, number one, is generally meant for large data, right? So you're usually not putting 1 or 2 megabytes in there. You're usually putting, 1 or 200 gigabytes of stuff in there, right? Well, part of the way how Cosmos works is it's the whole idea of it has physical partitions and logical partitions. The physical partitions are, I think, 100 not megabytes, but gigabytes now. But the logical partitions are only 20 gigabytes. So, if your data is less than 20 gigabytes, you care less, right? You don't care about the partitions. But once you get over 20 gigabytes, and really once you get over about 15, 16 gigabytes, you care because Azure starts moving your data around and to put it into a logical partition. And again, those partition keys help Azure say, oh, that data is in this partition, so it can query it faster. Otherwise, it has to go to each partition, see, oh, is it here? No. Oh, is it in here? Oh, no, let me go over here, right? So so partition keys are really, really important. And up until about 2 or 3 years ago, partition keys were very simple, just a simple string. They had this whole idea of hierarchical partition keys, so I could have a multi-level partition key. Again, you have to have some specialized uses for this. This is not something that a lot of people are going to use, but they now added this into any framework. So that's another good thing. And you can see in here, here, like here's their example. Their partition key is the tenant ID, the user ID, and the session ID. All right. That's where you're talking about like, you got multiple things that make up that partition key. And if you have a lot of data, that really can make a difference. So, and then just the improved link querying capabilities, which is good to see, right? They definitely made some improvements there. Yeah, this gets into what I don't like about the any framework with Cosmos. Well, anyone's ever heard me, I don't like any framework to begin with. I think it's made developers stupid. I maybe have opinions. So here we go back to back to AOT type stuff. So, like I say, lots of great stuff for Cosmos. Yeah.
So it just went right away from me. Cosmos, is that just for the cloud?
It is.
So I work in a server room. I was kind of curious of like, you said you had to pay for a SQL or for a query in SQL?
Yeah. Okay. So
because I was like, man, if you have to pay, then they're paying so much money just to use a server instead of like the cloud. I guess to do the SQL stuff.
So yeah. So I mean, basically, so instead of paying for hardware, right, you're paying for queries, right? So Azure has more than two, but there's two primary databases that Azure has in Azure, I was going to say. So you got Cosmos and you have Azure SQL, right? So Azure SQL is just SQL Server in the cloud, right? A little bit more than that, but it's essentially just, as a matter of fact, all SQL Server features come to the cloud first before, other than the ones that are exclusive to the on-prem version, which is very little. And sure enough, if Azure SQL has three different pricing models, one of which they're trying to get rid of, which is what they call their DTUs, which was this whole data transfer unit type thing, which was measuring over a span of time how much resources you're using and how long are you using it, right? That was basically DTU. Then they came up to what they call their virtual cores, which if you think about databases, how do we pay for most databases? We pay for the cores you're using. And it's that very same concept. And then they have their consumption model, which basically is similar to the vCores, but only for the time that is actually being queried. So like a Jasper, we're actually using that because we're a single shift company, right? So our production facility only runs from 6:30 in the morning until like 4:30 in the afternoon. So a lot of databases are not used at night. So, we can shut them down. We don't pay for them, right? Cosmos, on the other side, right? No one's a NoSQL database, right? So it's a different type of database to begin with, right? And in there, so I said it has two pricing models, but they're both they actually have a third one now, but I'm not going to go into that's a whole nother complicated story. But the primary you pay for what they call their request unit, but then they also have a serverless component. So you either are paying for a guaranteed number of request units per second, right? So hey, I'm going to guarantee I have 400 RUs per second, right? And that refreshes every second. Mm-hmm. And an RU essentially is a 1K read. All right, so that's essentially what a one RU is. Okay. And then like I say, in the provision model, the normal model, it refreshes every second, right? So it's the way how it works. And then in the serverless model, you're paying for, that request cost took 5.2 RUs, so you pay for 5.2, and obviously over a period of time, right? So it's just a different way of paying for things.
It was just super interesting.
Yeah.
Because like you're telling me, I didn't know you pay for a query in like a big business type corporate aspect, And then you just said like they don't run it during night, so they only run it during the day, because that's how many. Because I work at the night shift, I don't see any queries.
Yep.
But on day shift, they're doing SQL,
Oh, yeah.
SQL queries, updating APIs, and I'm just like, interesting. I don't know. It was just interesting.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. And no, definitely. I mean, like I said, tonight's ad hoc. We can. I meant to look again. What did they do with migrations? Anything interesting? Not really. So, all right. Aspire, which, if you ever listen to anything Microsoft right now, it's either A or Aspire, right? That's their two big things. So real quick, what is Aspire? So Aspire actually came out of Project Tie, which there was a reason why it's called Project Tie. It was always experimental, although plenty of people were using it in production, to include Jasper, right? We were using it. And the whole idea is, so you take your applications and then you build them in containers and you deploy your containers. Well, local development was a little bit of a pain, right? How do how does this one container know that you wrote that, needs to talk to this container? How does it reference it and all that kind of stuff? Project Tie started to address that, but it only could go so far. Aspire addresses it beautifully, right? I mean, it is really nice what it does. So it introduces the whole idea of an app host. And so in the app host, I basically say, okay, in my solution, I have a web front end, and I have an API, and maybe I have this other container that's doing this thing, and so forth. And I literally call it API service and web front end. And so, when the web front end reference, needs to make a call to the API service, in the code, I literally just say API service, and it knows how to connect over there automatically, right? So
How is that different from a Docker Compose?
well, see, now you're getting into my weakness of Docker.
Okay.
Because in the end, it's building all the Docker stuff, right? So that's part of what it's doing. But the whole benefit is as a developer, I'm not having to fool with that, right? So I'll go. Let me just. I don't really need to save it, but just because. Where is here? This will bring it up. So if we look at, that's not what I wanted to open up. That is what I'm working on right now, but that's not what I wanted. Okay. Repos, research. Yeah. So sure enough, this solution right here is if you just went to and said new solution, Spire, right? I don't think I made any changes because I'm playing with something with Aspire, and it doesn't matter the project. Well, so far, but so sure enough, if I open up the solution, so again, we see like the API service, we see the web, right? But one of the important parts is this web host, and again, you can see in here in my app host, not web host. I'm calling this a distributed application. I'm adding my Redis, which is adding a Redis container. I'm adding a project called API Service. I'm adding a project called Web Frontend. All right. And what's nice in here, and I don't know this project well enough to find this off the top of my head, but let's see if we can. So yeah, let's see here. If I remember right, I have to look here. I do back-end development, so some of this gets me a little bit tripped up. Because I'm trying to remember how it gets that. Well, at any rate, if you look, again, if we go to this client, you can see I'm just calling weather forecast. Or no, that's actually a variable. But it knows point being, I'm not finding it off the top of my head, but it makes it easier to develop, right? So, that's kind of Aspire. So, they've made a bunch of changes. Some of it is just evolution. Hey, because Aspire is brand new. It came out in May, right? So and it was announced in September of last year, right? Maybe November. So it is brand new, right? Now they've been working on it for a while, right? Because we actually heard some initial rumblings of it last March, not this year's March, but last year March. We being MVPs. But anyway, so some of the stuff is just evolutionary. Like you see, they move the templates, right? They put the templates in a better location, right? Like the dashboard. So this is another one of the big, nice features of Aspire. So here, if I start up Aspire, this is one of the really cool features in Aspire. Of course, last time I tried to demo Aspire, it did not go very well in this room. But I was going to say, I know it's running right now because I ran it the other day. So you get this dashboard, which is really cool, right? So like although you did see, something, I probably screwed something up because we're definitely getting, oh, you know what? I probably would help if I had Docker running. That would help. Now, if we run this, there we go. So what's really cool is you got this dashboard, right? And, so one, I've got quick links. So, I can click here. I can see my beautiful Hello World app, the weather piece that they built in here, right? So you can get that kind of stuff. I can click on the API and they'll just run the queries. That's nice. But what's really nice is, one, I see the console in here, right? So here, if we go back, click on the links here. And now if I go back to the console, if we start doing stuff, well, maybe if I do stuff that actually hits things. Why is the console? Oh, it would help if I pick a resource. That's why. So, as I have to hit this a couple times. Should. Well, make me a liar. If I hit the cache, it should definitely hit. Why is it not showing anything? Okay, I don't know. But you do have your console logs in there. More importantly, you have your structure logs. And, so think about when you're having problems and you're trying to figure this out. It's all, we had access to all this before, right? It's just made it a whole lot easier to get to it, right? And prettier, which prettier makes it easier. So, but when I'm trying to do the traces, or, again, if you want to do your metrics on here, right? Lots of different metrics. So I bring all up just because, we talk about improvements. That dashboard is one of the big things, right? One of the things that people get so excited about Aspire is that dashboard. So the fact that we've got UX enhancements, right? And I'm not going to read through all that, but I know some of the big deals. One, dark mode, because everything's going to have a dark mode in it. But the other big thing is they added a lot more responsiveness, right? So when I scale it up and down, it's more responsive. Which the important part is when I want to use it on the phone, right? That's what's important. And now, prior to this update, it didn't work very well. It worked on the phone, but you're scrolling back and forth and all that good stuff, right? So good stuff there. Here's where you see silly stuff. Okay, now we can add colors to our console log because why not? So, but I did like that they added the browser telemetry support because that can be important. All right. So there's waiting for dependencies. And you actually saw it because when I didn't have Docker running, what you saw was it saying, I'm waiting, right? And that's one of the things we added here because, not we, they added in here. So like example in here, is it showing, how was it showing it right here? Yeah, wait for, right? So you're starting RabbitMQ. So I don't use RabbitMQ very often. I use Azure products. But one of the things I was hearing about RabbitMQ is that when it starts up fresh, it can take 20, 30, 40 seconds to start up. And, so you need to wait for it, right? So that's one of these examples here. You're literally telling the engine, okay, get to this point, wait, and then finish up stuff. So it doesn't try to start hitting RabbitMQ before RabbitMQ is actually ready. So that's kind of nice because there's a lot. That's not the only kind of service that's like that, right? Other things just require time. That they're doing a lot of things when they start up. So that's good. They've added some more health checks, which again, when we're running production apps, these are important things. The other big thing, because you see, there's a bunch of stuff. Obviously, you got to have AI in there. So they've been adding some more stuff for resource customization, which is good. So Aspire's deployment picture needs more work. It works beautifully if I'm just a hobby developer and I'm publishing something out there. But when I'm an enterprise developer and I need to deploy stuff in the dev and the QA, and it wasn't meant for that so far, right? It's actually what I'm working on right now. I'm trying to build something that will do that. But one of the things they did do is, give me some better ways so that I can actually define how those names look like, right? Which is good to know. So I can match naming patterns and so forth. This other cool thing they did here. So we're talking about, SQL, the Azure SQL, right? Well, Azure SQL, Postgres, Redis, you can run these locally, or you can run them, as a Azure SQL database, right? So I'm not actually running a container; I'm actually running a service, and that's exactly what it's saying. It's saying, okay, when I'm running locally, when I'm a local dev, use a local version of the database, but when we go out to Azure, use Azure SQL. So I really like that they've added that, because I was just like a month and a half ago, I was looking at changes I was going to have to do to make that happen. So again, my developers didn't have to be affected by it. The other big one they're talking about, and I still have to look more in this, but this whole support for Azure functions. So those who know me know that I'm a big Azure function guy, right? I mean, it's that was one of the main things I was talking about last week was Azure functions, and so this is exciting, right? Anytime I see stuff for Azure functions, I get excited. But I still haven't. It's got usefulness, but I still wish they would do some more with it. But so essentially, what they've done, again, here you can see we're creating. I love it when you have a video you can't stop. You see they're creating an Azure function app, and notice. Let me wait till it gets to the next screen here. There you go. Enlist in, except for the keep on moving stuff. Yeah, list in .NET Aspire orchestration. Huh?
Accessibility failure. You can't stop or pause it.
Yes, but at the same rate, it means I'm not actually running a whole video here, so that does make that better.
Well, it's a WCAG failure is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's a failure of.
And for those who don't know, that's our accessibility expert right here. So, so what's cool what they're doing, they got a lot, they talk a lot about stuff in here. And again, I need to actually play with this because this just got released like right before, like 3 weeks ago, and I've just been busy. But what they have done, so we talked about the dashboard. So this Pigladden, now it's interesting, it just shows us project, which actually makes sense, but that is an Azure function, right? So you also are seeing that it's basically adding in here. And again, as a local developer, it's one less thing I have to open up, right? Azure Functions is really cool. So, all right, Azure Functions, the whole idea is you just write your little pieces of code and you have a trigger, right? So this file got written to a blob store. Hey, let me trigger off of that, right? Or those kind of triggers, and you can run them locally, right? But you have to run another console window and all this good stuff. They basically just put it into the dashboard, which is nice, right? The reason why I haven't really jumped on it yet is because they promised some more features that I can't talk about that I'm really waiting for, right? Because those are when I get that, then you're going to hear me say, okay, you all have to go to Aspire now because this is the way to do things, right? But they're actually having some problems getting it working, which is why it's not out yet. So, all right, another big thing, again, talking about deployment, now customization of Azure Container Apps. So Azure Container Apps. So we all know Kubernetes. Anyone who does Kubernetes knows how much you hate Kubernetes. I never found someone who actually loved, well, that's not true. I do know a couple people who are sadistic and actually love Kubernetes. All joking aside, Kubernetes is not easy, right? And one of the things that Microsoft came out with is Azure Container Apps, basically serverless containers, right? I don't have to deal with Kubernetes. Microsoft deals with it. I just put my containers up there. And the normal deployment model for Aspire is container apps. You don't have to do it through container apps, but that's normally how you would do it. And again, they've added more customization. So I can do some things like in here, and I'm looking to see, I need to read some more of this documentation. But here you can see the whole scale down to 0 because container apps are meant to scale up and down. I'm basically saying, hey, I do eventually want that to actually go to sleep when no one's actually using it. So I'm not paying for it to be running. So some nice features that they've added in there. All right. Like I said, I'm a big functions guy. I knew to go look for this article, even though it wasn't, So the big one, flux consumption. I have not presented flux consumption here, have I? No, I did it at the Azure group. Let me bring up something real quick. Not documents, presentations. Let's this one. So I'm obviously not going to go through this whole talk, but all right. So if we look at, so one of the things with that, okay, so whole idea of Azure Functions, you write small pieces of code, they're triggered off of actions, right? Lots of different types of action, actually, really, where did I put it? Oh, well, at any rate, lots of different actions you can do. But there's also lots of different hosting options. They've given you a lot of hosting options. So your consumption over here, that is, what we normally think about with serverless, because it is literally, hey, if something hits it, spin it up, let it run. And if no one's hit it anymore, spin it back down, right? So I'm only paying for when it's actually executing. Then they added the premium because hey, we need more power, right? We need more resources, more memory. But also the reason why I call it sort of serverless, because it actually never goes to fully sleep. There will always at least be one instance running of it, which makes sense for some uses. And then, they have dedicated container apps, all these other ones out here, all great stuff. But so the big thing, and they announced this. Well, they publicly announced it late last year, but flex consumption. So this is in between that consumption and the premium. I get the premium level type server. Well, I don't get. I shouldn't say that. You don't get all the memory and the CPU increases. Although again, only really special use cases need that extra memory and power. But a lot of things like I can have it never go to sleep, right? I can get things like that. One of the big deals, so like Jasper, we're hybrid, right? So we only have a couple things in the cloud. Most everything is on-prem. So like our stuff in the cloud has to reach back out to our on-prem, and you use what's called virtual networking to do that. Well, prior to flex consumption, you had to use premium to do that. Premium is $155 a month. Starts at $155 a month for each Azure function. We have 5 of them, right? And so we're paying that for 5 of them. Flex consumption, like I was doing a test, and one of those I'll be able to bring down to like $4.50 a month. I like that better. All right, that's a much better price. All right, but also they've rebuilt the scalar engine, so it's super, super fast. It scales up like incredible speeds. So the big deal is, let's see, this one went pretty quickly. They did an initial announcement to the MVPs March ago last year. So you have the MVP summit, that's in March, right? So when I say things in March, that's generally what I'm talking about, was the summit. And so they announced it there to, private, it wasn't even private preview. At that point, it was they were working on it. It went private preview like May or June of this year. No, that's not right. It went private preview March of this year. It went public preview like in June, I think it was. And this week they announced it's now general availability. All right. So really, really great to see that. With that being said, there is a big caveat. It is not in all the Azure regions. So not every Azure region has it. There's reasons that I don't think I'm allowed to talk about. That's the hard part when you're talking to Microsoft employees. You don't know what they're telling you is public or not. And I know I can talk. I know last week, even before the announcement, I was allowed to talk about what regions were opened up, but I don't know if I was allowed to talk about the other stuff. But anyway, not all the regions are there. So, for example, most of the U.S. regions are, but North Central is not, which is up in Chicago. So, and anyone who deals with North Central probably knows why it's not. But so that's a really nice feature that we've got in there. And again, I plan on moving a lot of things to flex consumption. Right? It's going to be my go-to, I think. So .NET 9 supports, the Redis extension is pretty cool, right? So again, I can have Redis be a trigger. So things getting popped into a Redis queue or cache, I can actually, respond to that. More importantly, I have bind needs, so I can easier write into those caches. So, to get data put in there. So that's really nice. This I wish I didn't do. So Azure Functions has 2 different process models for this is only for .NET. So Azure Functions doesn't just support .NET, it supports Java, Python, PHP, not PHP, a couple other things. In the .NET world, we started off with what was called in process. So the Azure framework actually ran inside the same host process, right? Which had some problems. And come around .NET 5, they said, they actually moved .NET to an isolated model, but they were supporting the in-process because backwards compatibility. And originally they said .NET 8 was going to be the first version that did not have in-process, but then they backtracked. But notice that they're just now, .NET 8 was released last year. They're just now adding the .NET 8 support because they did promise that would be the last version that would have it. And again, because we have to have something AI, we now have open AI triggers. I didn't realize it. What did I do that? I don't know. So I have not played with this yet, but this is pretty cool, right? Again, getting some. I think the bindings are probably the more interesting part of that, but I only say it because I haven't looked at what the triggers can do yet. So this is the other big thing, and now notice it says early access preview, which means you have to get permission to use it, right? So you can't just go and sign up for this, but they now have the durable task scheduler for, and this is really interesting. So you have Azure Functions, and then you have durable Azure Functions, which is literally what I was talking about last week. That's what I went to Prague for. Well, I did 2 presentations, but that one. And basically, it's for running workflows, right? So where I need to do a bunch of things, they're going to take a long period of time. That's what durable functions are for. So, and I'm going really quickly because I spent a whole hour just introducing durable functions. So one of the things that it depends on storage, right? And about 2 years ago, they added some different ways to do storage. Well, now they added this other one, which is another method of storage, but the more important part is I actually get more details about my workflows. And if you've ever done durable functions, you'll know how important this is because you get kind of this black box. You start into this workflow, and I can get statuses, right? I can report statuses back. But if I'm trying to debug it, it's really hard to see what's going on, right? Because it's all done asynchronously, and it's hard to capture it. So this is really nice with what they've done. Things like that. I'm not sure what that was trying to show. But yeah, I am on the preview, and I'm not sure I'm allowed to show those screens, so I won't. But I'm really excited about this because it's really cool. All right, last thing I've got. So anyone do Service Bus? Anyone even know what Service Bus is? All right, so Service Bus is a message bus, right? So that and I'm sure that cleared up everything for you. So the idea of a service bus is, so it's all event-driven architecture. I don't know why I drew a blank there. So the idea of basically the easiest way to understand event-driven architecture is, I'm an application, I do something, and I say, hey, I just did this, and I bet you someone else wants to know about it, right? And so you put it into this message bus, right? And then other applicants say, hey, I want to know when that happens, and so it goes out to the message bus and reads those messages, right? That's a really 30-second explanation, right? Really cool stuff you can do with it. So the cool part is, the hard part has been, is that Service Bus. It's a big service, right? It's not something you just go install on your machine. Well, until now, because now there's a local emulator, right? So, which is nice. It just makes local development a whole lot easier. I don't have to go all the way. I don't actually have to send messages out to Azure, and more importantly, I don't have to pay for messages going out. So I can have each developer have their own instance locally. They're not stomped on top of each other, because trust me, I've had that happen. So really cool. What's really cool about this? It's just a container. They literally took Service Bus and put it into a container, and they're packaging the container. Now they've done a couple things, so so it doesn't have all the capabilities. Like, for example, it doesn't have the portal, and they said I believe the plan is to never have the portal, right? So you got some limitations like that. There's only can be like 100 messages in your message bus at a time. But again, it's for local development. why would you have more than that? But outside of that, it is Service Bus. It is the whole thing. All right. So just really, really cool. Right. And it's free. Right. I mean, so I don't have to pay for, and again, like a company like ours, we depend on Service Bus. So this is really nice. Because more than anything else, like I said, I've had those days when I had 2 developers call me and say, hey, I did this thing and all of a sudden it's all screwed up. Hey, I was doing something and all of a sudden my data got all messed up. Well, you all need to stop doing it at the same time, right? Now we can get away from that. So in a nutshell, that's not bad. It's about an hour. Any other questions? I mean, or whether it's just about this or we can talk about anything, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be just what was released.
We were talking in the very beginning, we were talking about a box.
Yeah, let's see if I can find that real quick.
I was curious about the box.
So let's see here. Microsoft 365 device. I bet that should help me find this. Yeah, here we go. So they call it the link device. Do not accept. I hate those pop-ups about the notifications. So I don't really know. I mean, I just looked into it real second because this isn't my realm. But basically the whole idea, okay, so one of the things you have in 365 is basically virtual machines that are for, regular users. So not just your servers, but so your customer, your clients can actually use those. And so basically a much easier, simpler box that we can put on those desktop, on the actual desk, right? Because you can see here's the USB ports, right? So you can see it's not very big. I wonder if it tells me the size. Yeah, 4.72 inches square, right? And an inch thick. So real easy to put anywhere you need, right?
So it's not. Oh, it's okay.
It has almost no processing power whatsoever. It's connecting to the internet,
Okay.
and it's virtualizing that remote machine.
Okay.
Is what it's doing. But I mean, it can do 2 monitors at 4K. So you have all the power, right? I didn't hear it talk about this, but one of the things we looked at, and we haven't gone this step, but Microsoft also has what they call DevBox, right, which is a service. It's not an actual box. But again, the whole idea of Visual Studio running on the cloud, right? And so Jasper a couple of years ago got attacked with a ransomware attack, and we lost data, right? And because we obviously didn't pay the ransom, and we did actually lose data, and so they've been really skittish about a lot of things. And so one of the things that we do is our dev machines are actually in the server room, and then we remote into them. And so it's actually timed to life cycle those because it's not like we're using a virtualized server. We're actually using boxes. They're actually computers that are just, we then VM to.
Yeah, because that would have to, that's making sense.
Yeah.
That would do something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm glad they at least did that, right? Because I've had the Citrix box, and God, not great. That was a long time ago. But so it's time to refresh the hardware. And we actually need to go back to this to, whether or not we're going to actually buy hardware or we're going to look at using the service. Because one of the nice things about the service is that, I can say, oh, right now, generally I need this level of a machine. I need to be able to do this much. Oh, but right now I'm working on this project. It requires a bigger, machine. I can use it just for those time. And again, you're only paying for the hours you're using for it. So it's pretty cool. Now, grant you, we still have laptops. I mean, this is my personal laptop, but I mean, we do all get issued laptops. But in theory, you could have a dev that didn't get issued a laptop. They could just be issued that also. I don't know if they're going to have that work. I know their goal is really the 365 service of this. So
Yeah, I just started like a year ago learning this new job, so it's like learning all like the different ways that they're doing it and the other people doing
Yep.
it. So it's just all connected to me.
well, cool. Because I didn't bring up any slides, so I did forget to do all my introductory slides. So one, thanks to Tech for the food, and Slingshot for the space. Next month we're going to have Dwayne Newman, and I actually still need to confirm he may or may not be coming in. He lives in Kansas City, so he might be doing it remote. He might be doing it in person, but he will be speaking, and he's going to be talking about Maui. Because we did have a couple people asked for a session on Maui, and he's really good at Maui, and he's someone who's actually putting production code out, right? So it's not like just someone at Microsoft who, who's selling the product, right? He's actually really building stuff with it.
That's on the 19th, right?
I believe so. Which is, if I remember right, is the normal third Thursday of the month. Yes, the 19th, which, like I say, I'm pretty sure was the normal third Thursday. Yeah. So, and in January, so January will not be the normal third Thursday. It'll be the 23rd, because that third Thursday is actually Code Mash. Yeah, I will be at Code Mash. Apparently, well, I knew Arissa was going to be at Code Mash, but and actually, there might be the email now that I've confirmed the speaker. The speaker is all but confirmed, right? And basically, it's going to be a talk about communication, right? How to communicate, right? And I like having those kind of talks in January, right? The whole new year, new you type thing. But this is a guy who's been developing for like 30 years, and now he's actually he's kind of shifted his focus a little bit and doing more stuff like this. So that should be good. So, because I did forget to talk about all those kind of things. And as always, right? I mean, I'll ask anyone to come speak. All the worst they'll tell me is no, right? So if you ever have someone you're like, hey, I've seen this person, that'd be cool if they would speak. The hardest part about the Europeans is the time difference. I was just talking to a bunch of Europeans last week, and they're like, yeah, well, I'll come speak. I'm like, yeah, you got to speak in the middle of the night? Because, for most of them, it's a 6-hour difference. 6 hours ahead. So
What's Code Mash?
Code Mash is a really great conference. Huh?
I treated it as my birthday bash.
Yep.
It was the week of my birthday.
So it's an annual event up in Sandusky, Ohio. And the first question you should ask is, why would you want to go to Sandusky, Ohio in the middle of January? Because it is not a place you normally want to go, but you have Code Mash, right? Which is a really good size event. It actually shrank quite a bit since the pandemic, but they're also in the world's largest indoor water park. So you also get that part of the whole mix, right? So, the whole idea, learn throughout the day and then, go to this park at night.
Well, I think for me, it doesn't benefit, this part doesn't benefit me, but I think it benefits a lot of people that potentially want to attend. It's one of the few conferences I feel like where there's actually an encouragement to bring your family with you. So if you want to turn it into an entire family trip, you can, because they've got Kid Mash too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's Kid Mash. So they actually have sessions geared towards kids. And let's see here. If we look at the Kid Mash sessions, because, we got to be cool with the Z in there. Oh, come on. Really? Why does it not load?
I remember my first Code Mash, I inadvertently went to one of the Kids Mash sessions because I didn't realize it wasn't for the regular attendees.
They actually have cool sessions,
I painted a D&D figure. It was awesome.
So sure enough, like I said, they have their kid mass sessions. I don't know why I couldn't bring up the list, but like this one, So I'll be doing the magic of cloud, right? It's talking about how the cloud works, and I got to start writing this thing. But yeah, whole magical like dragons and knights and princesses and all that good stuff. I really got to start working on this one. I'm still working on the workshop that I'm doing. So, good event. It's not cheap, but it's not expensive, if that makes sense, right? And I'm looking at because I honestly don't know what the price is. So I have no idea. Oh, okay. So we're in regular pricing. So it's $1,100, right? So it's not cheap, right? But that's $1,100 for 4 days of content, right? But yeah, because that is a 4-day ticket. Because you do see there, if you don't, so you have 2 days of workshops and then 2 days of sessions, 1-hour sessions. So if you don't attend the workshops, it's half the price, which makes sense. It's half the days. So like I said, it's not cheap, but I mean, when you look at the sessions and then wow, you get to this page and the menu bar changes. That should also be an accessibility issue. I'm just giving you a hard time now. But if you look at these speakers, right? So one, of course, I know almost every single one of these people. But I mean, some of these are just really big names, but I'm trying to look like they're really big names. Yeah, but okay. Well, Corey House, if you're in the Iraq world, Corey House is super famous. That's the kind of names I was looking for. There should be some Microsoft folks in here.
I might get my hair dyed so it actually matches my profile picture again.
Yeah, there. Oh, it doesn't bring the big. Yeah, so as you can see, Iris is going to do an intro to accessibility. Gary Short, I mean, he's been up and around for a long, long time. Jennifer Marsman, one of the smartest women I've ever met. Let me rephrase that. One of the smartest people I've ever met, because I just realized that was degrading what I said. That's not what I meant out of it. But yeah.
Why do you say that, Chad?
So she's been involved in AI for like the last 10 years. She's just really, really smart. And she's really down to earth. I mean, number one, you talk to her, she's from Minnesota, and you can tell she's from Minnesota. She's got that deep Minnesotan accent, whoops. Jimmy Bogart. So if you ever use Mediator or what's the mapping thing? Automapper. That's Jimmy Bogart. Yeah. And I'm only going over the super big names, right? A lot of these other folks I'm passing through are actually pretty big names. Steve Smith. So if you ever looked at the clean code stuff, that's Steve Smith. It's kind of funny because he does not look at anything like his profile picture anymore.
Well, I think it's like really awesome too, because like when you got the great selection of like talks that are always there, but then there's always like all these additional like little, like there's always the makerspace room that they have set up. They've always got like, there's usually somebody there who like is selling board games and stuff, and then they usually have a game room where people can just go play board games and stuff, and like all kinds of other like little events and activities.
Yeah, so it's definitely an event I recommend. With that being said, I can also recommend other events that aren't as expensive, right? I mean, because it's unfortunately it's one of the more expensive ones. Partially because I'll tell you, you see all these speakers. We don't pay for the event. We have our hotels paid for. Just that in itself costs a lot of money, It's they put a big production on. So, all right. So I'm gonna cut off online. I think I clicked the button. Well, there we go. Well, you can even